So we have some users and some user profiles. Let's go ahead and add some data to the rest of the tables. Before I do that though, I'm going to want to refer to all three of these users later on, even after I've inserted rows into other tables. And so if I just use scope identity, that's not going to be able to refer back to these earlier user IDs. So what I'm going to do to keep things clear is I'm going to create some variables and then use those variables to hold the ID values. So the way you create a variable in Transact SQL, which is the SQL Server flavor of SQL, is using a declare statement. And let's go ahead and I'm trying to decide whether to put all my declares at the top or just sort of mix them in as I go. And I think I'm going to mix them in. So let's start with here. I've inserted a new row into mg user. I'm going to declare a variable, and you use an @ sign to show that it's a variable in the scope. And I'm going to call this variable Bob. And then I'm going to set the type of this variable to be numeric 13, 0, because it's going to hold user IDs, and that's the type of the user ID. So that's how you declare a variable. And then to set the value of the variable, you just say set @ Bob equal to, and then scope identity. So if I execute that set of code, the variable Bob should be set throughout this whole thing, at least as far as the scope goes. And so I should be able to say, for example, select @ Bob as Bob's ID. So let's execute the whole thing. And I see at the end that Bob's ID is 1. And then anywhere where I'm using Bob's ID, like here, I can use the variable value instead. So @ Bob. So there's Bob's profile. And then I'm going to do the same thing for Alice. So declare Alice numeric 13, 0. Then I do the insert into, and I set, actually, there, set Alice equals scope identity. And then I can use Alice's ID to create Alice's profile. And then I'll do the same with Charlie. So now I've saved those IDs, and I'll get rid of that. And so the first scenario is that Bob is going to create a discussion for a particular page that Bob has. And so I need a new discussion row. So here's my discussion table. And so I'm going to insert into mg discussion, and the values I want to specify are the discussion ID, which that's actually identity, so this gets auto numbered, and then the owner ID, and it's going to be Bob who's creating it, and then the name, discussion for Bob's page. And then I'm going to want to save this discussion ID because I'm going to use it. I'm just going to use single quotes here. And then the way you put a single quote inside of a single quoted string is by doubling it up. So single quote puts an apostrophe in the middle of a character string literal. And then to save the discussion ID, I'm going to declare disk ID equal, numeric 13.0 and set disk ID to scope identity. So now I have a discussion ID. I only need one discussion right now. Let's go ahead and make some posts. So the first post is going to be by Bob, welcoming everybody to the discussion. Post ID is identity auto numbered, so I don't specify that. Insert into MG post. And then values are parent ID is going to be null, so I'm going to put a null there. And discussion ID is going to be disk ID. User ID is going to be Bob. And then title is going to be welcome to my page. Should be single quoted string, so let me go ahead and do that. And for nvarchars and nchars, Unicode characters, if you want to, this is not a Unicode string, but it gets automatically converted by SQL when it tries to store it in an nvarchar column. But if I want to specify a Unicode string, I can put an n in front of the character string like so. So n in front of that means it's a Unicode. And then my content is going to be welcome to my page. I hope you enjoy it. And then for posted date, I can handle this in a couple of different ways. I can hard code a date, for example, by saying 8:30. Actually, what's 9:13? So 9/13/2018 at 1. It's actually 13:46:30. So I can specify a date like this as a character string literal, and it automatically gets converted to a date time. Or I can use a function that returns a date like, actually, it's getDate. So that's going to return whatever the current date is when this thing gets executed. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my definition for post. So here's the post table. And for posted date, I'm going to specify a default value. So the default is going to be whatever getDate returns. So if I create a row and I don't specify a posted date, it's going to automatically grab whatever the current date is on the database server and store that as the value for posted date. And then if I'm using this syntax where I haven't specified a list of columns and I want to use values for each one, when I get to the posted date, if I want to use a default value, I can just say default. And that's just a special keyword that means use whatever the default value is for this column. So there's a post. I'm going to go ahead and execute everything up till now. And then I'm going to select star from, tab this over, mg post, join mg discussion on discussion ID is equal to post ID join user on mg user ID equal mg discussion fk user ID. Actually, I wanted mg post fk user ID. And should this be should actually be FK discussion ID here. There, that's what I needed. And then let's also join MG user as U2. Let's call this one as U1. On U2.userID is mgdiscussion.fkownerID. And then we'll join mgprofile as mp, call it p1 on p1.userID equals u1.userID. And we'll make that a left join in case there is no profile data for a user. And then left join mg profile ID as p2 on p2.userID is u2.userID. So that should be all of the data so far. And I execute it. And so I have one post. Post ID 1 goes with board 1, user 1. The title, the content. Posted date is when this record was created, which was the default. Then here's the discussion information. Here's the discussion ID. Here's the owner ID. Here's the name for the discussion group. Then the user information for the person who made the post. So that's Bob. And then the user information for the person who made the board, the owner of the discussion, that's also Bob. And then we have profile information for Bob and as the poster and profile information for Bob as the discussion owner. So let's go ahead and make another post. So Bob made a post and then Alice is going to reply to that post. So I'm going to need the ID of this post so that I can supply that as the parent ID in Alice's reply. So let's go ahead and save that. Bob's post. So I have Bob's post stored. I'm going to insert into mg post values. This time I'm going to specify Bob's post as the parent post ID because it's a reply. And then same discussion. Alice is making this post. And her title is thanks, and her content is thanks for setting up this discussion, Bob. And then default for the creation date. And then let's have Charlie reply to that one. So declare Alice's post as numeric 13.0. Set Alice's post to scope identity. And then insert into mg post values, reply to Alice's post on the discussion from Charlie. What an upbeat group of people. Okay, so now we have 3 posts. And let's make one other post. I don't think I'll need to do anything with Charlie's post here. So let's go ahead and insert into MG post. And then Charlie is going to post another top level post. So I'm not going to add a parent ID. And what do we want to have Charlie say? Hey. To make it a little more realistic. So let's go ahead and execute all of this stuff and see what we end up with in our big join at the bottom. So we have 4 posts, 2 top level posts, and 1 reply and another reply. They're all to the same discussion. 1 from Bob, 1 from Alice, 2 from Charlie. There are the titles, the content. These were all created within the same couple of seconds because pretty fast. But and then discussion ID, owner ID, username, and profile information for each of the users. Okay, so the only thing we have left to add are some ratings. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to have Bob, Alice, and Charlie are all going to upvote Bob's initial post. And then Alice is going to upvote Alice's post. And then Bob and Alice are going to downvote Charlie's top level post, and Charlie's going to upvote Charlie's top level post. So I actually need the ID for Charlie's post here. So declare @Charlie's post numeric 13,0. Set Charlie's post equal to scope identity. And then insert into rating values. So first I have user ID, then post ID, and then upvote, which is either -1 or +1. So in the first person is Bob, and Bob is going to upvote Bob's post. That's actually going to be default behavior for the system. Whenever you create a post, you're automatically going to start with 1 point because you upvote yourself. And then, so the upvote here is going to be 1. And then I'm going to insert multiple values here. So I'm going to use a different syntax for that. So what I do is I just have one set of values for each row that I want to insert. So Bob upvoted Bob's post, Alice upvoted Bob's post, and Charlie, oh, there's a comma here, and Charlie upvoted Bob's post. And then Alice upvoted her own post. Need commas. And then Charlie's going to upvote his own post. No one upvoted Charlie's reply, but that's okay. Charlie upvoted Charlie's post, and Bob and Alice both downvoted Charlie's post. And this will actually cause an integrity violation because there's a check constraint that says that this has to be either 1 or -1. So that's a test to see whether that works or not. And then finally, Alice is going to downvote Charlie's post as well. So I should get a check constraint here. Let's execute. And it popped over to the messages window. If I scroll over, insert statement conflicted with the check constraint, MG rating upvote. Conflict occurred in database, blah, rating column upvote. So it doesn't tell me specifically what the check condition is because that would be code, but it does tell me that I have a problem here. So let's go ahead and make that be 1, and then I'll execute the whole thing again. Great, and I have some data. So if I want for each post, I also want to know the score, the total score on that post, or how many upvotes and how many downvotes. I can say select star from MG post, join MG rating on MG rating.fk post ID equal MG post.post ID, and then group by MG post.post ID, and I'll include the title. So that's mgpost.title. And then in the select, I'm going to select mgpost.title. We'll do mgpost.post ID. So the post ID, the title, and then sum of upvote. As total score. And then let's order in chronological order. So that's going to be order by mg post dot posted date. Oh, and if I'm ordering by that, I have to group by that as well. And I do want one line for each post, and each post is going to have a posted date, and so that should be fine. There. So I have 3 posts that have ratings. You'll notice post 3 didn't show up because nobody rated it. 3 people liked Bob's initial post, and then Alice liked her own post. Nobody rated Charlie's reply to Alice's reply, and then 1 person liked Charlie's post, Charlie, and 2 people didn't, for a net total score of -1.